Some people become louder after trauma. Others become quieter, deeper, harder to reach. This video is about what happens when trauma turns you inward. If trauma didn't make you dramatic, angry, or outwardly broken, but instead made you introspective, distant, and deeply self-contained, this is not avoidance. According to Jungian psychology, it may be the psyche protecting itself while reorganizing from the inside. Trauma does not always make people loud. Sometimes it makes them inward. According to Carl Jung, when the psyche experiences overwhelming pain, it does not simply collapse. It adapts. And one of the most powerful adaptations is withdrawal. Not withdrawal from life, but withdrawal from noise. You may notice that after trauma, you no longer crave constant interaction. Conversations feel heavier. Crowds feel draining. Surface-level connection feels unbearable. This is not because you became antisocial. It is because your psyche redirected energy inward. Jung believed that when the external world becomes unsafe, the psyche turns toward the inner world to preserve coherence. Attention shifts from outward engagement to inner meaning. You begin to think more, reflect more, notice patterns more deeply. Silence becomes tolerable, even necessary. This inward turn is often misunderstood. Others may say you've changed, that you're distant, that you've closed off. But what they don't see is that something is forming. Trauma shatters old assumptions about safety, trust, and identity. The psyche cannot simply resume life as before. It must rebuild, and rebuilding happens inwardly first. This is why trauma survivors often develop depth, insight, psychological awareness. They see beneath appearances because appearances once failed them. The inner world becomes a refuge, not an escape, a workshop. Jung described this phase as a descent into the unconscious, into memory, into meaning. It is uncomfortable, slow, and often lonely, but it is not regression. It is preparation. When trauma turns you inward, one of the first things you notice is how misunderstood you become. People may say you are distant, cold, closed off, hard to read. But according to Carl Jung, inwardness after trauma is not emotional absence. It is emotional concentration. Your feelings did not disappear. They deepened. After trauma, the psyche becomes selective. It no longer exposes itself freely. It no longer disperses energy outward without discernment. This is not avoidance. It is protection refined by experience. You learn something painful. Not everyone is safe. Not every space is honest. Not every connection is worthy of your inner life. So the psyche adapts. You stop reacting impulsively. You stop explaining yourself. You stop sharing before understanding who you're sharing with. From the outside, this looks like withdrawal. From the inside, it feels like containment. Jung believed that containment is essential for healing. Without it, the psyche leaks. Emotions spill without integration. Stories repeat without insight. Wounds reopen without meaning. Trauma survivors who turn inward often develop a strong internal dialogue. They reflect before they speak. They observe before they trust. They feel deeply but express carefully. This can unsettle others. People who process emotions externally may feel rejected by your restraint. They may mistake your silence for judgment, your boundaries for rejection. But silence is not absence. It is listening. And boundaries are not walls. They are filters. The inward turn teaches discernment. Who can enter, who cannot, and why. This phase is uncomfortable because it removes old social reflexes. You no longer perform emotional accessibility to be accepted. You no longer soothe others at your own expense. You become selective with your presence. This selectivity is not bitterness. It is wisdom learned through pain. Trauma does not just wound you. It dissolves who you thought you were. Before trauma, identity often rests on assumptions about safety, fairness, control, and belonging. Trauma shatters these assumptions instantly, and when assumptions collapse, identity follows. Jung believed that identity crisis is not pathological. It is transformational. When the old self can no longer function, the psyche must reorganize from a deeper center. This is why trauma survivors often feel like strangers to their former selves. Things that once mattered feel empty. People you once related to feel distant. Goals that once motivated you feel irrelevant. This is not depression by default. It is disillusionment. The psyche is stripping away what no longer holds truth. The inward turn becomes a reconstruction site. You question everything: values, relationships, beliefs, ambitions. You begin to ask not who should I be, but what is real? This questioning is exhausting, but it is honest. Jung called this phase a night sea journey, a descent into uncertainty where old identities dissolve and no new ones have fully formed. You may feel unmoored, between versions of yourself, between worlds, but this liminal state is necessary. The psyche cannot rebuild on false foundations, so it pauses, it listens, it gathers. Slowly, a different self begins to emerge, quieter, less reactive, less naive, a self shaped by truth rather than illusion. This self does not seek validation. It seeks alignment. As the inward turn deepens, something subtle begins to happen. Your perception sharpens. You notice things you once ignored. Tone shifts, micro-expressions, emotional undercurrents beneath ordinary conversations. Your nervous system, once overwhelmed, becomes finely attuned. According to Carl Jung, trauma often heightens awareness because the psyche learns to scan for meaning where safety was once lost. This is not paranoia. It is adaptation. When trust was broken, the psyche learned to read between the lines. It learned that what is unspoken often matters more than what is said. So you become observant. Quietly, you sense when someone is unsafe before evidence appears. You feel when a space carries tension. You recognize patterns in behavior long before others do. This heightened perception can feel isolating. You may struggle to tolerate shallow conversation. You may withdraw not because you dislike people, but because you perceive too much. Noise feels intrusive. Dishonesty feels unbearable. Solitude becomes necessary, not as avoidance, but as regulation. Jung believed that solitude is not absence of relationship, but relationship with the self. In solitude, the psyche integrates what is learned instead of constantly reacting to the external world. This is why trauma survivors often crave alone time, even when they are capable of connection. The inner world requires space to organize itself. Without solitude, hyper-awareness becomes exhaustion. With solitude, it becomes wisdom. You choose words carefully. You choose people carefully. This selectivity is not superiority. It is survival refined into discernment. Jung noted that individuals who undergo deep inner transformation often experience a period of social misalignment. They no longer resonate with environments built on denial or performance. They are not withdrawn from life. They are attuned to truth. This attunement reshapes everything: friendships, values, ambitions. You begin to build a life that can support your nervous system rather than overwhelm it. This phase is quiet, but it is powerful because it prepares you for integration. As the inward process continues, another shift quietly takes place. Illusions fall away, not dramatically, not all at once, but permanently. According to Carl Jung, trauma forces a psyche into emotional sobriety. Fantasies about people, relationships, and life itself no longer survive contact with reality. You stop romanticizing. You stop idealizing. You stop assuming good intentions where there is no evidence. This does not make you cynical. It makes you clear. Before trauma, hope may have been effortless. Trust may have been automatic. After trauma, these qualities become earned rather than assumed. You no longer confuse potential with truth. You no longer ignore patterns to preserve comfort. You no longer override intuition to maintain attachment. This clarity can feel heavy. You see what others refuse to see. You recognize emotional immaturity, avoidance, manipulation, and denial quickly, not because you judge, but because you've lived the consequences. This awareness narrows your world, but it also protects it. Jung believed that loss of illusion is a necessary stage of individuation. The psyche cannot mature while clinging to comforting lies. Trauma strips away false hope so that real meaning can form. You become emotionally sober. You choose fewer people. You invest more carefully. You value consistency over charm. This is not bitterness. It is discernment forged through pain. With clarity comes something else: agency. Trauma once took control away. Decisions were forced. Safety was violated. Trust was broken. Now, inwardness begins to restore what was lost. You start choosing again, not impulsively, not emotionally, but deliberately. According to Carl Jung, healing is not about returning to who you were before trauma. It is about becoming someone who can stand in their own authority. You begin to trust your inner signals. When something feels wrong, you listen. When something feels rushed, you slow down. When something demands self-betrayal, you step back. These boundaries are not rigid. They are intuitive. You no longer need external permission to protect yourself. You no longer debate your instincts. You no longer justify your limits. This self-trust is quiet, but unshakable. Others may misinterpret it as distance or coldness, but inside you feel grounded, oriented, stable. Jung believed that true strength emerges when the psyche no longer fragments under pressure. Trauma taught you where you break. Integration teaches you where you hold. You are no longer trying to prove resilience. You are embodying it. Eventually, the inward turn completes its work. You are no longer retreating. You are no longer hiding. You are no longer rebuilding. You are inhabiting yourself. The inner world that once formed out of necessity becomes your foundation. You move through life with fewer illusions, fewer attachments, and far greater clarity. You understand your limits. You respect your energy. You trust your perception. You do not rush intimacy. You do not fear solitude. You do not chase what cannot meet you. According to Carl Jung, trauma does not destroy the psyche. It reveals what was never stable and forces the emergence of something more real. The person you become is not louder. They are deeper. Not more expressive, but more contained. Not more trusting, but more discerning. You do not need to return to who you were before trauma. That version survived by assumption. This one survives by truth. And this truth becomes your quiet strength. You are no longer turned inward because you are wounded. You are inward because you are integrated. Thank you for listening. Until next time, take care of what is truly yours.